then you end up working much later nights and that sort of stuff. So like deadlines get moved up. And then on top of that, some other person will come in, which I know you mentioned the question about that, asking that up front. So that can be helpful. But a lot of times, a third party or another person will come in and just give a bunch of other feedback that takes it in a totally different direction. And I think for the most part, I've done a really good job of communicating that and like saying what's possible and what's not and kind of case by case. But I was just curious, because it does happen quite a bit, at least in my world in video, or they want changes that are just like gonna take a long time. So I always try to communicate that. But I always wonder on my end, because I never see the other side of it, what goes on behind the scenes on the client side of, are they really annoyed with this? Like, should, as much as I do what I can on my side. So I'm just kind of curious if you run into that and if you have any, suggestions or tips for it. If
Totally.
not, that's
yeah. Yeah, and video is nuts. I mean, I have so many friends that do video, and I've like dabbled in some very entry level versions of it of myself, and it's a completely different workflow than design, because it takes infinitely longer when someone says, hey, in the middle of this 10 minute plus clip, I want you to take this piece out and realign everything else to the music timeline that's there. It's like that sort of like what someone thinks of as being a quick fix does not really exist in the same way in terms of like our creative side of things on design. It's like a lot of times feedback doesn't affect that many things in the way that video does. So I completely feel you on the fact that can screw with a lot of things. What I'll usually do in that situation when that's happening, and it's happening frequently, is I'll start to say or ask myself a question of like, not just how do I respond now, but how do I put more systems in place around me to prevent that from happening in the future? But not necessarily just prevent it, but also like, how do I put more systems in place to help me deal with it when it does happen? Because if it's something that's happening frequently with the client, it will happen again. And so it's more like, how do I deal with it the right way? So what I would do up front in that situation is like, one, build in more of a change order type of system into the scope and into what you're signing up front, so that they know before they get into another project, hey, if we spring this crap on you last minute, it's gonna charge you, 3x the amount or whatever a different day rate is type of thing, or like, percentage increase, so that they know up front if it happens again, this is what's coming. So they're not, so they're aware of it. It's less jarring when they get confronted with it in the future. But then the other side of that too is like in the middle of it, setting more checkpoints for yourself, so that if you see that sort of thing starting to happen, you can kind of surface it. If this keeps going this way, we're going to break the timeline like this, and that will lead to this increase in cost based on what we have up front.